Chapter 11. Caroline. A nicely polished wooden hunting rifle with a bit of a scratch on the side near the gun stock hangs on the faded wallflowers. The moose's bull antler spreads like a wing above it, and below it, Mr. Turner sits at the dining table. He appears to be coming from the lounge room in the early 60s. The neat hair, white short-sleeved shirt, and thin black tie complete the image. After his day managing at Radio Shack, he's relaxing in his recliner chair with his feet raised, still covered with black socks, and face staring at the framed copy of Jesus Christ above the analog television. Mr. Turner is listening to, rather than watching the afternoon local television news. Silverware and ceramic clanks add to the sound of finally being home. "Thank you, Jesus," he whispers. Deer meat is on the menu tonight, and it's from the freezer he had filled from his hunt last spring, made with vegetable hodgepodge, and complemented with dinner rolls. On his right and left, he holds the hand of his daughter Caroline and his mother Lydia. Across the table from him is his wife, Desiree. "For the bounty we are about to receive, may the Lord make us truly thankful. Amen." A short and simple grace. It's a slightly different prayer than the traditional Mormon Thanksgiving, although it's been passed down for generations that the man of the table leads the family grace. After dinner, they all gather in the television room and watch late-night shows. They giggle at the amusing parts of the program without conversing, and it was like that since the deer meat was being defrosted from the freezer before dinner. "Good night, Caroline," says Lydia. "Good night, everyone," Caroline replies. "Good night, guys," Desiree says before closing their bedroom door after her husband. "Don't wear those same green pajamas tonight, Frederick. I have the other green one cleaned." And Caroline's bedroom door is also already closed. The young Caroline was still not very sleepy, and she picks up a pocket novel lying on a mirrored table. There's a photo of her and Junior attached in the corner of her reflection, and the same pink blush appears on her face as it does each time she looks at her eyes in the photo. The image shows an adoring but rehearsed position, but the red eyes from Karen's camera flash made her feel somewhat embarrassed at what Junior might think. Nevertheless, she opens the novel that she's been religiously reading before bedtime. She's kept herself busy as always with the comfort of books, possibly serving as a break from wondering where Junior was every day after the photo was taken. She's now halfway to finishing Bid Time Return by Richard Matheson. She's already seen the movie, which is titled Somewhere in Time. It's about a man of the 1970s who travels back in time to court a 19th century stage actress whose photograph has captivated him. She falls asleep reading, and in the morning, the same routine follows as before. Under a tree, she waits for Hunter to urinate. But this morning, Wyatt pulls over by the curb near her house. He walks to her and talks to her between the white-painted wooden fence. "Are you Caroline?" he asks. "Yes," she replies. "I'm Detective Wyatt McCoy from Carbon Planet," he says, showing his identification. "Is this about Junior?" "Yes." Caroline smiles and then looks behind her house and then to Hunter. "Are you done already?" she asks the dog, then glances back again, making sure no one in the family has noticed. "Just a sec," she says. "All right," Wyatt replies. Caroline walks Hunter back to the house and then outside her fence close to Wyatt. "Can we go somewhere more private?" she asks. "Sure." He looks at their house, wondering what she might be hiding. "What about the Riverside Park?" she asks, clearly wanting to be anywhere but the house. "It's a big park. Meet me by the Blue Whale. You won't miss it. Then we can talk by the riverfront seating." "All right, I'll see you there then. At what time?" "I'm just grabbing my keys. I'll be in an orange hatchback." Wyatt and Caroline stroll by the riverfront, sitting in one of the many rows of wide chairs. A tugboat passes by, making a hoot. A seagull near them is pecking the remains of a pear fruit, and a fisherman is standing near the cliff of the river, occupied with a hooded child playing on a Game & Watch. The smell of the river reminds Wyatt of Romel's childhood. "I haven't been this close to the big water since I was 5. Not even in Chicago." Thanks for selecting this spot, he adds. Then he reaches into his jacket pocket for the box of cigarettes and lights one up, shielding it from the wind. You're welcome, she says. Where are you from? Wait a sec, he says, and pulls out another object from his jacket. It's a tape recorder, and he clicks record and places it between them. Caroline sees the small tape rolling. Do I have to say my name first or something? Sure, he replies. And I'm from Chicago, by the way. The name is Detective Wyatt McCoy. He puts his hand out for a handshake. Hi, Caroline smiles, shaking his hand. Well, my name is Caroline Turner, Detective. Wow, Chicago. Or you mean you're from Chicago but work at the Detroit department? My agency is from Chicago, Wyatt smiles. I also grew up there. Last time Junior's little sister told me it was the Detroit FBI. Still is, but they're onto something else for the meantime. And I'm from another agency hired by the O'Dwyers. Carbon Planet? Caroline asks. Carbon Planet, Wyatt replies. Sounds more like a series from the Outer Limits. Pretty much. He shrugs and hands her a business card. You can also find us from any of your local potpourri ads. Caroline takes the card, reads it, and smiles, saying, I think that's pretty cool. I didn't think he was the type of guy who would get into that kind of trouble. Ah, so you heard. I'm Karen's teacher's aide. We talk most of the time during breaks. I'm also a student now preparing to be a school teacher one day. What class? Oh, I don't know yet. Right now, I'm an intern in math. So what does the FBI have so far? Probably the same thing you got from Karen. I was hoping you could add a bit more with what you knew about Junior. She laughs a little, giggly as he takes her on a trip to her childhood with Junior. I knew him before kindergarten. It was her 13th birthday when she noticed Junior wasn't like the other boys. Although he had the cheapest present, Caroline had chosen to give him her first kiss on the cheek, aside from her family and pets. Junior didn't say anything, just a giggle from Caroline about the silence sparked Junior's facial expressions. As mentioned, previously they were close friends until high school, which gives rise to a whole host of other subgroup identities, and they drifted apart right around sophomore year. High school was mostly about the characters they built outside and within themselves. She fancied older trends, and Junior the opposite. Both liked one another otherwise, but both feared sacrificing what had become their comfort zones among their cliques. For Caroline, it was her increased time at the library, and tutoring classmates for all classes except PE. And for Junior, he gained from the popular friends he connected with being in the football and wrestling teams. The number of times they greeted each other when they passed by at school had lessened, until there was never even a kiss. Knowing this spurred her into finishing even more books, sometimes even twice or just a few of her favorite chapters from novels she already read. Whatever mood needed a filler, replacing the unwanted feelings from the changes of knowing Junior. What has been accustomed to her feelings for Junior still wears a mask, especially since their last date ended with his absence. She thought, just someone I knew. He was a friend, she says, smiling. He's thinking of you, Wyatt says. How do you know? One of our psychics said so. Wyatt pulls out an envelope from his jacket and hands it to Caroline. So Junior's alive? She asks, staring at the envelope and assuming it's a letter from Junior. But it's just recycled, with a missing recipient. Even smells like a cigarette and Brut cologne. Wyatt was going to use a paper towel, and if there was a newspaper, he would use it too. Instead, he took out the pocket cash money from the envelope given by Carbon Planet and replaced it with a rubber band he found from his top drawer. All of them are. The data was gathered by the team to analyze and give back quick results from Carbon Planet. Well, that's what the guys from work say. He had a beep earlier from the firm just before going to Caroline's house. Caroline, curious and happy about what it could be, took out the contents of the old envelope, finding a Polaroid image. Surprised by what she sees, she touches her hat. I don't remember posing for this portrait, she puzzles, smiling. The artist wanted you to keep it. He even signed it for you. Ahmed planned on tearing the portrait off the sketchbook for Caroline, but not yet. Not until their investigation was accomplished. The sketchbook he carries has its own religion, and tearing out a page is akin to a sin. But for this, he could spare a page. It was his first sketchbook, and he planned on getting another with the spiral on top. Next time, he would keep copies of work-related pieces separate from masterpieces he drew. Shopping for a camera was already on his list. She looks at the writing on the Polaroid and notices the name is Arabic. It's Junior in the Middle East or something. It's our psychic's name, the guy who drew the portrait, Wyatt says, amused. Amazing, she says. Even got the right side of my bow tie. She keeps staring at the portrait. Tell him I said thank you. I'll let him know. As far as Junior goes, we still have no clue of where he is yet. But our leads suspect there are suspicious activities of where they disappeared. Lake Erie, she says. I can trust you not to share the details I just told you, right? I'll keep it, even from Karen, Detective. This conversation is limited to just you. Wyatt doesn't ask any more questions. Instead, he walks by the cliff along the riverfront and smokes another cigarette, giving Caroline some space and silence. Caroline then places the Polaroid back inside the envelope and into her handbag, staring far off into the river. She struggles with mixed feelings, then a little spark of a smile, knowing Junior misses her. Wyatt coughs from his last drag of smoke. You know, smoking is bad for you, Caroline says. I know, thanks, Wyatt says, flicking away the butt of the cigarette. I guess we're good from here, Caroline. You set to go? Ready when you are. A cigarette is the only thing warming me up right now. Yeah, let's get out of here. Nice park, though. Thanks, and thank you for the portrait, Detective. I'm genuinely impressed by how he could picture what I look like, she says, although the picture has a lot less baby fat in her cheeks. A little surprised by how much she likes her portrait, Wyatt coughs more, holding a fist towards his mouth. You're welcome, Wyatt replies kindly. Are you all right, Detective? Caroline asks with her hand on Wyatt's back. I'm cool. Let's keep walking. The detective then walks with her towards the parking lot, took one last Polaroid photo of her, and departed home. A new folder is added to the missing GM worker's case, and it's of Caroline Turner. At her home, another photo, next to her reflection, leaves a prouder kind of blush on her cheeks. I miss you too, she says aloud. She then goes to bed that night without any discouragement from any novels, hoping she will see Junior in a dream, perhaps in another realm. Once again, with the handheld radio, and this time a glass of water on Wyatt's lamp table, he speaks into the radio. Yes, we were aware of Caroline, says Jordan. Bryce joined the same Mormon church service they go to. Bryce? I haven't been to church for quite some time, but I do know Mr. Turner a lot better than the rest of his family. After the missing GM workers, we were also aware of the two, Caroline and Junior. Her name was never mentioned, Wyatt says. We concluded to not add her to the case. We have an informant at Clippard, Karen's middle school, working as a teacher. Caroline is clean, says Jordan. It's mostly Karen, Junior's little sister, who was giving all the information, and it's normal for a 12-year-old to go on the gossip with classmates, even teachers like Caroline. Just questions about not becoming victims themselves, mystified and curious about what happened, and Caroline is one of them. We were also aware of their short courtship before his disappearance, but their lifestyle just doesn't fit, although most that do are a big advantage. They knew each other since they were little, Wyatt says. You already talked to her? Jordan asks. Just today, but she was withdrawing a bit at the idea of me getting closer to her home. Bryce laughs. She probably didn't want you to get nosy around her father. As I said, I knew the Turners for a while now, especially Frederick. Her father, have you seen his dog yet? The border collie? Yeah, that's Hunter. That dog is trained like a soldier by that man, and whenever we go hunting with him, that dog never missed a duck wherever it crashes. Frederick Turner is someone that Detective Bryce Beasley befriended in his Mormon church. Thus far, he knew him as a veteran who served in Vietnam, like his father, who had also served in World War I, and his father before him, and so on. Then an accident left him impotent due to his previous medication's adverse effect. Luckily, it happened to him when Caroline was only 2 years old, and she was the cause for their militant lineage ending. Hunter was closest to being her brother. If he were a man, he would most likely have been treated differently. Instead, his training under his master focused only on being a sidekick and hunting wild game, than teaching the art of mental strength, of pressing the bayonet into another man's heart when encountering a foe of war. "It's nothing personal, my son," said Frederick's father. "Once that other guy joins the military on the other side, it's either you or him. Now, which one will it be? The other guy doesn't eat or make love for you. Don't be afraid, Frederick. No matter what, our side will always be with the Lord Almighty." Frederick had 2 older brothers. Tragically, both died young in military battles before he could get to know them personally. One in Normandy and the other in the Pacific. "The accident?" Wyatt asks. "And what about it?" Bryce replies. "How did it happen?" Whenever Bryce plans to go hunting in a group, it takes at least 5 people he knows. Frederick is most likely one of the people making the group. Even if it was only 3 people, it couldn't be anyone else but him. He was the type of brave man to risk his limb to win a wild game. He went as far as British Columbia into the Canadian mountains on the mission of taking home wild game. Frederick had relatives in Alaska, and whenever he and his family visited them, he made sure he also used the remaining time to take advantage right across the border. And he didn't settle for just a deer, let alone a rabbit. He didn't travel that far on a Radio Shack clerk's salary with a military retirement on his way to becoming a manager. His bravery had paid the price when he aimed recklessly on a rocky cliff at a mountain goat. Suddenly, another goat charged him from behind, breaking his hip bone. Falling off, it must have been good prayers that saved him as he met another rocky platform 15 yards below. He got away alive, but with a broken hip and then permanently dislocated shoulder. His scapula had a metal plate, making it tremendously uncomfortable to raise his hunting rifle to take home yet another wild bounty ever since. "The man walks a little funny at times. Some mistake him as a homosexual. But he's all man once you get to know him," Bryce says with a little laugh. "Besides, work, hunting, and church is pretty much all of his interest when it comes to being in public. He must take something to get rid of that pain you mentioned." "I was about to mention that," Bryce says. "He scared me half to death at one point when we went hunting and the man suddenly fainted. He had a seizure, foam coming out of his mouth, eyes rolling and everything. Boy, that scared the lights out of me. The other guy we were with had to call for help while I stayed and tried to resuscitate him. God have mercy, oh man, there were 3 of us then, and we were so far away from town. Well, according to the medic, that son of a gun, to put it simply, overdosed with painkillers." Jordan keeps laughing in the background while pressing and letting go of the button to speak before getting on the air. "Is he addicted?" Wyatt asks. "That's funny you said that, because he calls them folks that are demon-possessed. But I'm afraid to say that he is. Still not convincing enough, though, to know the type getting involved. Not Frederick," Bryce chuckles. "He even advised I get an exorcism performed when he was smelling marijuana on my son. He was a hippie then, going through the phases. Now he's a man of his own, working for the fire department. Jordan?" "There's nothing else I could say, Wyatt," he says, laughing. "Damn story just never gets old whenever I hear it." Bryce continues laughing with Jordan. "I don't know what it is. Why can I look straight into his eyes and not laugh? But in this moment I can." "Probably because you've seen that man gut way too many carcasses, man." The 2 continue laughing. "Well, guys, I already put her name on the files. As far as our methods go, she's an important element to our investigation." "That's fine with me," Jordan says. "Just don't make changes to what was previously there." "Bryce?" "All right with me, too. It's nice of you to give us an update, Detective. We sure do appreciate that." "Okay, guys. Have a pleasant night, gentlemen. Over. Another session at the chess table with milk and cookies. Wyatt is still discouraged by the weeping woman, so he calls it a night tonight and gives it a rest to head to bed. Again, his shields are down and reveal little Rommel in a metal tub along with Bong and Michael, who paddle the partly rusted vessel. "Gotta keep steady, Rommel," Michael said, who had been using the same aluminum boat when collecting recyclables until his father found out. Even the simple disciplining of a child could get corrupted at times. Most of these instances were avenues for his father to release his anger at life. In general, this entailed beating him. His mother noticed it and told her 7-year-old son to keep away from anything that could be an excuse for abuse. "Keep it steady, Rommel," yelled little Bong, holding on tightly to the mouth of their small boat. "You too, Bong," Michael said. "Can you see them now?" he asked Rommel. "The feathers?" "Not yet," he said. They were underneath a bridge heading toward an open sewer with the butchers above them. The scared Rommel trembled as he craned his neck for a closer peek at the drainage, determined to know what was behind the smell of blood. He had only had one encounter with the rusty smell, when a broken glass bottle he used as a projectile to scare a rat away from his shanty left him with a thumb scar. The many clucks and goococks were unseen, but sure enough, the sound was familiar to Rommel. "Chickens," he gasped. Then the swish of water mixed with blood and feathers washed down the drainage and to the creek behind the round doorway and another shaded canal. It was not the final truth of facing death yet. Perhaps this would be enough for little Rommel. "I see it," Rommel yelled, scaring Bong and unbalancing the boat. As Michael tried to keep the boat steady, the paddle slapped Rommel to the side, toppling him into the waters full of blood and feathers. "Help! I can't swim!" Rommel screamed with a gargle. "Hold on to my stick," Michael yelled as little Bong began to cry, holding on tighter to the same mouth of the wobbly boat. A scream from Wyatt is followed by multiple gasps, feeding his lungs with as much air as they were denied. Then he coughs, and little red spots appear on his white blanket. Thinking it came from the chickens he ate, he touches his tongue to pull out the feathers. He finds none, but his fingers are now painted red. After washing his face and mouth in the bathroom sink, he stares at the mirror, and it reflects little Rommel. He closes his eyes, trying to get his senses back by repeating the current time and location. He then opens his eyes again and sees Wyatt, but this time, it's the sight of an adult facing death, and it's drowning him once again. "It only makes sense for me not to smoke," he thinks as he sits back on his couch, not even reaching for another round for milk and cookies. Just the glass of water he places on the lamp table previously. This time the chicken blood he expected turned out to be his. This is a wake-up call for Wyatt. "Shit," he whispers and rubs his face. Then a frantic triple knock is heard from his door. Wyatt opens it and sees Brittany. "Open sesame," she says. "I guess you heard me a minute ago," Wyatt says. "It's the second time you called for your mother, and I don't think she can hear you, Wyatt." "That loud?" Brittany nods. "Is everything all right in there?" She whispers with her heels raised, peeking inside his unit. "Is everything all right?" asks Susie by the stairs. "It's all right," they both say. "Sorry about that, Susie," Wyatt adds. Susie stares at them for a second and then shakes her head as she goes back downstairs. Then she says, "Jesus, I thought there was a fire." Brittany raises her eyebrows at Wyatt. "This can't go on like this every night, man. She can get bitchy." Wyatt is feeling much better now and notices the lusty look on how Brittany knocks herself at night. He can't help but discern the perky imprint of her nipples behind her baggy white shirt and the thighs underneath. He can only imagine it's just her panties under there, or nothing at all. "She's definitely a faded aquamarine," he thought. "Not beige yet," he whispered. Brittany smiles, amused. "Are we clear, sir?" Wyatt blinked and replied, "Thanks for your concern, Brittany." "Hey, you haven't been to our club yet," she says as she turns back to her unit. "Sorry, been busy." She faces Wyatt, holding her unit's doorknob. Well, that sounds more like it was coming from being too busy. You better stop by, or I'll write a noise report to Susie. She smiles, opening her door. Good night, Brittany, Wyatt says, smiling back. Night-night, she says, and closes her door silently.